You're listening to DraftKings Network.
This is the Dan Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
I know that people come to this show for a distraction. We have a fun cast in today. I guarantee you we will be that distraction from what happened over the weekend. But we can't start this show without discussing the tragic events of the weekend. One person lost their life. A couple people are still receiving medical attention, injured from the assassination attempt on former President Trump's life over the weekend. And to say it was jarring to experience all of that, I think is an understatement. I kind of felt numb. Where were you when you heard the news?
I was sitting at home. I too felt numb. You start to ask yourself questions as to how this is happening in 2024. You start to think about the gun laws in the United States of America. You start to think about the Secret Service. You start to think about how lucky Donald Trump is to be alive today. And you wonder and you ask yourself, how could someone get that close with a rifle, with any sort of weapon, to a former president and a guy who is currently running for president of the United States? I was numb as well.
Yeah, I couldn't process all those things all at once. That happened, I guess, in the several hours that followed. It was kind of eerie in that I was leaving the American Century Championship in Tahoe, and I remember when I was in high school, 9/11 happened, and I was trying to piece things together by hearing people talk around the lockers. This was also like pre-smartphones and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I remember picking up on certain things. And I thought people were talking about how Independence Day was airing on like Network Fox. It was a Sunday night movie. And I thought people were talking about that. And I started piecing together more of this information. It was kind of similar. I was leaving this golf course and I heard people talking like President Trump was shot at. I was like, wait, what? So I X-search Trump shots fired and I see this incredibly strong image of Donald Trump bleeding from the side of his face, holding a fist in the air with the American flag behind him, a really striking image. And I start finding out what happened. And yeah, Stugotz, all the same questions. Like, if a former president is there, this has to be. The Secret Service is there. This is one of the more secure places on the planet. And you realize the shot came from outside the grounds and you have all these questions. But it was a moment in time. I continued my walk. I got to the casino. Every TV had been either switched to news coverage or the news preempted what was going on.
All the big-time anchors were called in.
Wall-to-wall coverage on this really horrific act. And then the processing starts happening. You try to find out, is anybody injured? Did they capture this person? The world that we live in right now, you start seeing all the misinformation on social media, and you try to parse what's real, what isn't. And then you start processing. And my process was, I understand how we got here. And it makes me like really, really sad. In the last few years, we had what happened on January 6th. We had an armed assailant enter the home of the Pelosi's and try a politically motivated attack that severely injured Nancy Pelosi's husband.
There are things that we have seen recently, both over the weekend and the last 2 years, which I personally thought we'd never see in my lifetime.
Yeah, and now we have this crescendo over the weekend of an attempt on Donald Trump's life. And I think in the days that followed, what really struck me was how normal everything seemed to be afterwards. I thought that this would still be something that everybody's living with right now.
Well, what do you think was going to happen? We were going to cancel sporting events, things were going to, what do you think was going to happen?
Yeah, because you could see like all the sporting events that happened that were on schedule that followed, and you start asking questions like, there's no way any of this would be happening if that bullet was a little bit closer to Donald Trump. And I was just really struck by how the world kept moving. And I want to hit pause on that because, no, the world should not keep moving. This is...
Well, Mike, hold on a second, because Trump kept moving.
Well, yeah, Trump...
I believe he played golf yesterday.
Yeah. Trump was pictured at the golf course, which, I mean, people can deal with an attack on their life however they want. One of your supporters is in the hospital. People can parse like what the optics are there. That's not. But I do want to talk about the general normalcy that everybody just kind of fell into. And no, we shouldn't be normal. There is a huge, very clear and obvious spike in politically motivated violence. Sometimes it plays out in hate crimes. Sometimes it may play out in hugely toxic rhetoric on your social media. And unfortunately, it's played out now with an assassination attempt on presently the leading candidate for president. And we should do everything in our power to put our foot down and say this should not be normal. This should not be reacted to in the way that it is. We need to, again, it's cliche, but use this as a moment to come together. And I'm a little scared that we're not. And
you're scared because Biden said we need to come together. Trump has said he has scrapped his entire speech for tonight. Republican National Convention. He has scrapped the entire speech. He will talk about unity and dialing it down a little bit and all of us coming together. You don't believe them, is what you're saying. Because you have every reason to be skeptical about that. You do.
I think that so far people are kind of meeting the moment, saying the right things, and sometimes not saying anything is the right thing, especially when you consider some of the track records here. But then I started processing, like, well, what is my role in this? Am I a contributing factor? Am I making the discourse worse? Am I, by calling out things that I see, contributing to a toxic rhetoric? Do I want to kind of publicly check out on all of this? All these questions start popping up. What does this mean for my family? What does this mean for November? Is this going to be worse? Is this the start of something? Because that was a fear that I had, which is also post-traumatic stress from 9/11. Because you start seeing things pop up on social media and you see all this increased security. And I really do hope that it looks like from a tragedy standpoint, we have the one loss of life. The former president is, as you mentioned, playing golf. Hopefully it all ends there and we can all just take the temperature down, dial it back, and realize that we are percolating at an insane place. And maybe, hopefully in retrospect, that's the crescendo and it doesn't get any worse after that. And I really hope the politicians involved take the opportunity to cool everything down, because that was something that doesn't happen here. And if I'm someone from another country.
Happened in the 80s, hasn't happened since Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, well, I was actually reminded of this on social media. Someone threw a grenade at President Bush and it didn't go off.
Right.
I was not aware of that. But I would say that let's all take the opportunity to realize this needs to cool off. I'm really worried about our reaction to it, almost as much as I was made worried by the attempt. Now, let's talk about the attempt. We know some things about the shooter. Again, this is a very tricky time for misinformation on the internet, but this happened in a state where the shooter got this gun. He's not old enough to rent a car in this state, but he is old enough to procure an assault rifle and take an attempt on the former president's life. And
he can buy that rifle, walk through a field, get to within 160 yards, I guess, of the former president of the United States. He can do that, but he can't drive, he can't drink.
So if I'm saying things like this doesn't happen in our country, and I've seen the perspective of people from outside of our country, and they usually just turn and say, what are you talking about? Of course it happens in your country. Look at the last few years. Look at your record with gun violence and mass shootings. And that was another thing that I started to process after the initial shock of the attempt on the former president's life is people can't gather and celebrate a common tether anymore without the fear of this. That's supposed to be one of the more secure places on the planet, and gun violence is lapping up upon its shores.
It's because guns are so accessible, Mike, in the United States. So we know that. Like, we've been down this many, many times, and hopefully this will lead to a change in gun laws. But we know it won't.
It won't.
Right.
It won't.
Yeah.
There were, when Sandy Hook was allowed to happen, you realize that we were at the point of no return. This is an attempt on the former president's life. If there's any kind of eye-opening moment when it comes to gun laws. It would be that one. I don't think we're going to see that, but hopefully, again, the former president has been relatively quiet publicly. He's put a couple messages out on Truth Social, but this is an opportunity to do something good when it comes to gun violence. But I don't know how realistic that is. But there is some.
You'll find out tonight, right?
There is some good.
Donald Trump has first crack at kind of uniting the country, uniting the parties. They're never going to agree on everything, but at least they could dial down the temperature a little bit. And Donald Trump has first crack at that this evening.
It's a huge evening for America. I think COVID was another one of these opportunities that the former President Trump had in his past, where he had an opportunity to unify, and the discourse was such that we got just more extreme and more polarized. And I hope that does not happen in the next few days. And I think this is a huge moment in time, and Donald Trump's reaction to it is hugely important. And I hope, for the sake of everybody, we don't make things worse, because that was scary. And you want to lean on, hey, that's not our country. In the last few years, kind of has been. And now we have this assassination attempt, and hopefully it's in our rearview mirror and not something that's predictive for the road ahead. So it's a Dan Le Batard show with Stugotz. We got Stugotz back. Dan will be back in tomorrow.
Shocked that he missed today. It's Open Championship week.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Jon Stewart isn't doing his show today. There are logistic issues for the Daily Show. So I know Dan wanted to be here, but I think with the travel coming back from Africa, that was too difficult to task. The plan was always for him to be in tomorrow. So he's going to be in tomorrow, and it's going to be business as usual. It takes a lot to outshine what happened over the weekend in terms of security breakdowns, and Copa America, its final.
They tried.
Hard Rock Stadium, man, they did their damnedest to be the least secure place in America this week. Chris, Cody, you were there. I was out there. Terrifying scene. Really scary images. Tons of people got roughed up. And let's get into why this happened, how it happened. Chris, you've been to several events at the stadium.
Besides Miami? I mean...
Well, you knew there was going to be a shit show aspect to this. Once the final was announced, Argentina, Colombia, I was trying to explain to people outside of South Florida what this was. I called it one of the biggest international soccer matches of all time.
You told me it was the biggest.
No, outside of the World Cup,
right?
You could make a real argument that was the biggest soccer match ever. And there were a lot of people, it's like, it's not even the biggest soccer match of the weekend. You got Spain versus England. Shut up. Get-in price was like triple what it was for Euro. I know this market. I know those teams. I know its support. I knew it was going to be something to experience. And thankfully, the MLS helped us out, and we were there for it. But driving up, you already knew it was going to be bad news. Chris, you go to events there a lot of times. I'm a Miami Hurricane season ticket holder. I was really concerned when I pulled up and I saw less uniformed personnel than I do for a Bethune-Cookman game establishing a perimeter.
But driving up is when you realize this could be a problem. I could have told you that a week ago.
Well, look, this is a venue, Stugotz, that kind of successfully and quietly has become one of the premier venues in all of entertainment.
Yep.
There aren't places that can host world-class tennis, Formula One, Super Bowls, WrestleManias, Taylor Swift's, college football playoffs, the way that this one has. And it's done all of that without any public scrutiny, without any high-profile incidents. It's always been well organized. And driving up, yeah, I could tell right away that something was different about their setup, and it was not going to be a good thing. Chris, did you have the same experience?
It was just an insane amount of people. The vibes were actually great until you got up to the stadium. Like in the parking lot, in the far parts of the parking lot, it was kind of normal. It seemed really crowded. And I was like, holy shit, everyone's got a ticket to this thing? And the parking lot was like, you can't get into the parking lot without a ticket. That rule was not followed.
No one had a ticket.
But, dude, when I tell you it was legitimately scary, every gate before, like at 7 when they were supposed to open, every gate, the 4 corners, and like the VIP entrances. When I'm telling you, tens of thousands of people pressed up against it as if they were like trying to, like, it was scary, dude. People banging on the glass. Like, I understood why they were like, we're not opening this. And like Mike said, there was no barrier. So it was one of those things where as soon as they opened the door, they got bum rushed. The employees at that point were probably told, don't fight it. Just like, what are you going to do at that point? I didn't even scan my ticket to get in because the entrance that I was at got bum rushed to the extent that I was sitting there with my ticket like, where do I scan this? And I just walked in because it was chaos. There was fights. I saw someone got like kicked in the face. I saw a guy with his kid and the kid's like sobbing, crying. It was legitimately horrifying for a good like 10-minute stretch getting in there.
So why was it that way? And I mentioned like the Bethune-Cookman perimeter that they established outside the stadium for Miami Hurricanes games. The Miami Hurricanes and the stadium operations people, they pay uniform personnel to be on the outside. CONMEBOL, for whatever reason, who's a governing body here in conjunction with CONCACAF, they take over lead when it comes to stadium ops. So pulling in, you don't have the uniform personnel outside establishing a perimeter, checking for parking vouchers to get into the stadium. To get into my parking lot, had to make a U-turn that was really not efficient at all, and I was left on my own on an island as a sea of people were moving from nearby places, being dropped off by Ubers. They were all on the street. So I'm getting waved at by stadium personnel who is now inside the gates, who usually is outside the gates, telling me to come in. And I'm asking how? How can I drive in there? There is right now, presently, as you're screaming at me, not doing it in a kind fashion, but I understand it's all crazy. There is presently 80 people around my car right now. You are telling me to drive through them without any uniformed personnel guiding the way to come meet you there. Fine. Now, I'm an outlier because they checked my parking ticket and to see if I actually had tickets. And I got in, and then I got to the ticket place where I actually enter, and this is the entrance. I went in the entrance that I do for Hurricanes games all the time, and I know exactly how that place got bum rushed because I went to the front of a line after waiting for 40 minutes for a suite entrance ticket. I go to a suite entrance, and someone tells me that's not the entrance for this. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's always the entrance for this. They're like, well, that's always the entrance for other things, but today the entrance is over there, and he points to a singular door with a singular metal detector with a line that is wrapped around the venue, and he tells me to go to that entrance. So you're having thousands, every single person with a club level ticket trying to squeeze into one door. Now in front of me, there are fights, there's pushing, there's shoving, and once you start having 2 people pushing and shoving, it's a domino effect. More people push and shove, they crack open a door, you're hot, you got your family, you start making a run for it. You start pushing against. The entrance that I walked in was that entrance that you've seen on social media that got totally destroyed, the 72 club entrance. That's where I walked in. I can absolutely see how that happened. I don't want to excuse the behavior of the people there, but I also think it was a byproduct of the entire setup. I've been out there for Miami FSU. Those people for Miami FSU, way more sauced up before the actual event starts than these people. This got out of hand, this got violent, and it was all because it wasn't mitigated on the front end. People made this situation worse. And you have families trying to defend themselves. You have cops now coming in with a full head of steam, making things worse, really pushing things because they're not stadium ops people. They're trying to manage this entire situation, which has already crossed through the threshold into a very dangerous public security matter. And so they're going to meet that moment with the type of aggression that you're used to seeing from Miami PD. It was all really bad, really scary, really messy. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Hard Rock Stadium operations were allowed to do their usual job and had to take a back seat to a whole bunch of bureaucrats that don't know how to operate that stadium. And we saw how it played out with people actually going into AC vents. Like, dude, die hard.
Going into AC vents, people sneaking into the 200 level, which is like the suite level. At points, they had the doors shut with like something in it, blocking it. And people are like on the glass like, no, I have a ticket to be in there. And they're just like, nope, there's thousands of people out there. We're not letting you in. Just legitimately scary. At one point, I don't want to make light of this. At one point, I almost grabbed a kid and did my I have a child thing. It was that kind of chaos.
It did feel like
I have a child.
Run through with a kid.
I have a child. Let me in.
It did feel
Great
like
shield.
Titanic. It absolutely did feel like Titanic.
What was the idea with the vents, right? We were playing the video on stream.
I don't know.
Were people going to get through, like, schematically through the stadium to, like, somewhere else? Is there, like, a place where you can, like, just hop out on the other side? Because what if you get in that vent?
Mission Impossible.
You start climbing, you're like, oh, shit, I'm lost. Where do I go?
Mike and I were sitting in, like, our nice suite, and we were expecting, like, a head to, like, come through the air conditioning vent. Like, this place is taken. All right, next.
Yeah, we were absolutely expecting people to crash through the top of the ceiling in our suite. Yeah, MLS hooked it up. We were in Club Live, and if we had that difficult of a time getting in, I can't imagine what people in the upper deck were experiencing. Again, I told you, the get-in price for this was 3 times as much as it was for the Euro Final. People had paid $3,000 and didn't even get their ticket scanned. Some people were just stuck outside.
Is there a chance that someone is stuck in a vent right now?
There is.
Wow.
There absolutely
Trying to call, doesn't have service. He's like, oh.
There's absolutely, like, I'm sure they're doing a thorough search, but yeah, absolutely.
You say that jokingly. I would bet that there's one fan still in that stadium.
I guarantee you there's a fan that's somewhere they shouldn't be right now.
Stuck, though.
Potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you'd leave the stadium if you weren't stuck.
At this point, you're banging, right? You're like, all right. I need
And then once you get inside the doors, you realize that where are all the people? It was the game's kicking off in 15 minutes. I know there's a ton of people here. I just walked through a sea of people. Where is everybody? You knew the game would be delayed in true, like, governing body soccer style.
They were in the vents.
There was a public announcement from some dude, I guess an official from CONMEBOL, with a bunch of cops behind him. And he was saying something that seemed important, but the sound wasn't working on the announcement, so I don't know. But I gathered that they were saying that because of what was going on outside, they were going to delay the game. The game got delayed about 75 minutes. I know a bunch of stories, and I know a bunch of people that tried to get to their seats. People were in their seats, and they had to handle it mano a mano, which is like, hey, get out of here or I'm going to have to get security. And you had a couple people calling bluff. Go find the security. Security has bigger fish to fry. They're not going to help you out here. So a bunch of people had tickets. They didn't actually watch the match from the seats that were assigned to them. It was real bad, real bad.
What time was the game supposed to start?
Supposed to start at 8.
And what time did it start?
9:22.
Did you guys have a time in mind where, like, hey, if it doesn't start by this time, it's a Sunday night, I got to work tomorrow. Did you have a time in mind where you're like, hey, I'm going to bail on this game?
I had that for if we didn't get let in. But we got let in like around game time.
So you would have waited till 11 if you had to.
I was sitting like, if it's 9 o'clock and we're not even in the stadium yet, I'm leaving.
I had a babysitter, and so I had to get back at a time. I also had a friend who had very nice seats that couldn't make it to their seats, and she was stuck outside. And I was worried about her because she was just by herself. So I wanted to make it out safely. I went to the bathroom, and I saw several police officers in riot gear, and I was like, this could be bad. At that point, you wonder, like, depending on how this game ends, this could be a riot afterwards, and the police are dressed like they're expecting it to be. So I told Cynthia, let's leave at around, like, minute 80. And I take Cynthia, we go downstairs, the elevator doors open to the 72 Club. I see this disaster area, and I saw 200 Miami PD riot officers. It feels like an Armageddon type of movie. It was really scary. So that just made me want to get out of there more. And so I find my friend. I get swarmed by like 14 people trying to get a screen cap of my ticket so they can go inside. I'm like, read the room, pal. I get to the car. I drive through some barricades because I had heard that they closed off 27th Avenue, which seemed like a great idea at the time, let me tell you. I just got to the 95 exit, and I was
This is an action movie. I mean, you driving through barricades.
I had just watched Dante's Peak.
Right.
I'm working on a limited fake.
It's a good movie.
Limited fake Pierce Brosnan and Dante's Peak. You want to hear it?
Yeah, please.
Have to put the town on alert. What are you doing? You have to put the town on alert. He says that like 75 times in the first half hour.
Why are you working on this?
You have to put the town on alert.
But why?
Well, it actually came in handy because I got everybody in my Jeep and I started driving like Pierce Brosnan in Dante's Peak, putting the town on alert.
It's a good thing you worked it out beforehand. Yeah. I mean,
Don Le Batard.
Number 3, Chick-fil-A waffle fries.
Yeah, we can get behind this.
Love it.
I mean,
Nah, I think it's an overrated fry.
you guys go ketchup or Chick-fil-A sauce when you have the Chick-fil-A
Chick-fil-A.
fry?
Polynesian sauce.
Polynesian,
wow.
that's my brother right there.
Good call.
You're my brother.
Stugotz.
Oh my God.
What a weird interaction.
Wow. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Lucy, this would have been the best edition of Off-Roading ever. You really miss a golden opportunity here with Colombia, Argentina.
When we went to Michigan, Ohio State, the fans were like swarming us and they were not nice. And that was just Michigan fans. So I could not be happier that I was not there.
Well, it was a different shade of maize and blue. Probably as incoherent and angry as you've ever seen. Look, there were a lot of people that wanted to be a part of that atmosphere, that thought they just wanted to be around the grounds. They have that TV. It's actually set up for if you want to just tailgate and you have a ticket to do so. It's actually kind of a nice setup over there. We've seen with tennis and whatnot, totally different crowd. 3 times. Also, I heard from this is my own reporting, from stadium ops people that I know at Hard Rock Stadium. CONMEBOL also sold more tickets than they actually had. So that was a contributing factor as to why more people were there. But, this is an event town. You know that there was an expensive ticket. People were just going to want to be there around that atmosphere. And then people were like, well, shit, if everyone's going to make a run for it and some people are going to get in that stadium, why don't I? So it's a real mob mentality thing that spirals out of control. And thankfully, I went to bed as soon as that match ended, really afraid for what I was going to wake up to, because I saw all those riot cops. I just thought, wow, Colombia's not going to take this loss well. And thankfully, nothing on social media afterwards. So kudos to law enforcement and stadium operations for salvaging what was a disaster and a huge black eye for a venue that is usually stellar in this department.
I feel like everyone at the end was just like, we've done enough.
Yeah.
Let's go home.
Well, this is so
Really?
It was just kind of like, I feel like
this
we
is
caused
bad.
enough
It's been
chaos
a
for
day.
one night.
It's been, yeah.
It's after midnight.
It's been a weekend.
Let's leave it
Yeah,
alone.
we're all just a little tired.
No one needs this in their life. Let's just go. International soccer matches, especially ones that have access to the secondary market. Keep in mind, a lot of these cup finals, there isn't a game time that you can go into in Europe. There is no such thing as a secondary market. I know that's hard to believe for club soccer. Like, if you want to see a Premier League game, you're risking a lot if you're going to try to go to the secondary market. It's just not an aspect of the ticket marketplace over there. So you never see what you saw, which is all these rival fans sitting together in their pockets. Yeah, you have some silos, but you have sky blue and white shirts next to yellow shirts, and you're hoping for a lot of harmony in a really emotional game.
A lot of yellow.
And it was a lot of yellow, but we could all see that. There were some people saying like, oh, this is Messi mania. I'm like, dude, you have no idea what Miami is.
I'll get to him in just a second, but you cannot allow people who don't have tickets into the stadium, into the parking lot to tailgate, to get all liquored up, because they're so close to a game that they want to go to. There's a good chance that some of them are going to try to get in illegally.
Well, how do
That's a terrible idea.
Exactly.
Seriously.
Stugotz, you're...
Captain Hindsight. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, they had a rule. No, you're not allowed in the parking lot without a ticket, but it was just hard to enforce it.
But Mike's saying there's a tailgating area. You're that close to a game that you really want to see. You're all liquored up. You've been drinking for 4 hours. Yeah, some people are going to get unruly. They're going to try to get into the stadium.
Right, but you mitigate that by having a perimeter and you have different checkpoints that people go through. So they're not all bottlenecking, and you don't have like one person there telling tens of thousands of people, no, you don't have a ticket. You have a ticket, come on through, because that's going to have a huge delay. You spread that out across all the entrances, which is what they do for friggin' Bethune-Cookman. And why they didn't have it there for the Copa America final, I don't know. I mean, I do know, because CONMEBOL was in charge and CONCACAF was in charge, and they decided, no, we're the sheriff in town, you listen to us. To which I say, and I saw the mayor's statement on this, you're the cops. You don't say CONMEBOL was in charge. You're in charge. You're the cops. What are you doing? Why is no one throwing their hands up saying, that's a bad plan? We do this all the time. I'm sure it happened, but look, this is how you get the cup final. You bend at the knee. You bend the knee to CONMEBOL and CONCACAF and you say, you're in charge. We'll do things your way, even though our way keeps everybody safe. Even though our way has a stellar record and is able to host World Cup tennis, World Cup matches. We'll see if that happens in 2026 now on the heels of this. But Formula One, you name it, this venue can do it. But here, with CONCACAF and CONMEBOL involved, that's when we're going to decide we're going to be a shit show. Real bad situation.
Not prepared. I mean,
Real bad situation. Do you think soccer is dead still?
I do. I mean, you stay up until midnight. You get a single goal. You get Messi crying for no reason. I mean, just bawling on the sidelines. And what is going on? I'm serious. It's like a soap opera soccer. I mean, half the game is watching guys riding around on the ground like they're in some sort of pain that they'll never, ever get rid of for the remainder of their life. And then they're up 3 minutes later, and they're fine, and they're running around the pitch.
Guys, can we put up that?
Game.
Can we put up the ankle picture, please?
Yeah.
Can we let Stugotz?
Stugotz said Messi was crying for no reason. Stugotz,
Look at that ankle.
look at the size of that ankle.
I get it. Yeah. He was fine. I mean, he heard it in the first half. He got up 2 minutes later. He's flying around the field. He's doing whatever it is that Messi does, not scoring goals. And he's crying. Mike, I can't get into the game. I tried to watch it last night. I did. You told me it was the biggest non-World Cup soccer game in the history of soccer. I would say some of those, New York Arrows game, Shep Messing, Steve Jungle, they were probably bigger.
Okay, that's club soccer. Totally different conversation. In the
Okay.
history of international soccer, this is probably the biggest non-World Cup match of my lifetime.
But I try to get into it. It's delayed 90 minutes. The game finally starts. Guys are falling all over the field. They're faking injuries. And you get a single goal. It's midnight.
Faking
It's
injuries, diving all over the place. That's not a faked
I
injury.
don't like the sport. I don't know what to tell you.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, I tried for you. I did. There were 2 games yesterday. You had Spain and England. That was 2-1, I think.
That was a
Spain
good
won.
game.
Right. What does it mean? I mean,
They're European champions.
so does Spain now play Colombia or
Spain is
Argentina?
well, actually,
They should do that.
Well,
Right,
they-
Thank you. I'm going to fix soccer now.
They actually do. Next summer, they'll play like a final, I think, where they take the UEFA champion against a CONMEBOL champion, and they have a really funny name attached to it, and they play for a trophy. But what happens next
Who's going to
is
care in a year? I mean,
what happens next is there's another Euro in 4 years, and someone will be named European champion in 4 years. But in 2 years is a World Cup. That has nothing to do with what we saw over the weekend. It's just, each qualifying region has a championship. They essentially have a World Cup just for their continents. And that's what happened there.
So which one would you rather win? Like, what's considered the
World
better
Cup.
league?
The World Cup.
No.
is
I'm talking about like last night's game or England and Spain.
Which one's more impressive? UEFA. I mean, if you look at FIFA rankings, look, they're both really hard to win. The world champion presently resides in South America, and entering that match last night, Colombia had the longest undefeated streak in international soccer. A really interesting team, Colombia, because James, I think he won player of the tournament. James, who everyone would consider a superstar, on the club side, really bizarre career. Often injured, a journeyman, not playing well for much of the last 10 years on the club side. But on the international stage, he is so much better. He is every bit the superstar that he flashed in Brazil at the World Cup. He's incredible. It's a real huge gulf between who he is on the international stage and who he is on the club stage. And it was high drama, high theater. Colombia, I would essentially describe their talent, and people may dismiss me for this. I know the clubs that these players play for. That is a ragtag group. When James is your talisman, when James is your solid number, your number one name atop the team sheet, you're in a dire talent situation in your qualifying region, and they put together the longest undefeated streak entering last night. So an incredible game, tragic in some respects. I also saw children in the arms of their parents crying. It's hot. People, it becomes like survival mode out there. I can see how that spirals out of hand. Like the people had their hand in it. Law enforcement had their hand in it. Government bodies had their hand in it. Huge failure from the stadium ops people that told me they knew better. They straight up said, yeah, that's the entrance usually. But for this, it's over there. You're having someone tell you that with a straight face, knowing how dangerous that situation's going to be. It's no wonder that escalator on that side got totally destroyed.
Got to slip that guy at 20, by the way.
You have
Hey,
to.
buddy, come on.
I tried that move.
Come on.
Although on a night like that, it might be a C note.
Yeah, C note, but I mean, come on.
I saw
Mike
I saw Mike McDaniel walk up and get in. I'm like, I'm gonna go over there.
Yeah, that guy
His
probably.
office, though. I mean,
that guy probably has it figured out. He knows all the great vents to crawl into.
That's where
here.
the guy in the vent is, Mike McDaniel's office.
Dude, you're saying
Suspended over.
Look, can we show the video again of the people climbing into the vents? There is definitely somebody inside the air conditioning system.
You
in
make a
Hard Rock
wrong
Stadium.
turn. I mean, you're going for a mile inside an AC
lost.
vent.
Where do I get out? I saw some guy just totally ditch his wife or girlfriend because she couldn't get up the canopy. It was just like he tried to like lift her, she fell back down, and then he was just
kept
like,
going?
"Sorry, honey. See you on the backside."
Yeah.
His ex-wife.
Well, mob mentality is a very real thing. We see it spiral all the time with riots where you're like, well, this person's going to do it. And then you get altitude. There's a 30 for 30 on the Vancouver riots when Vancouver lost the Stanley Cup. And everyone's just like, I don't really know how that got out of hand. It's like that escalated quickly. It's the Anchorman meme. But
Never against Bethune, though.
never against Bethune. It's
Keep
crazy.
saying that. Starting today, I can run to a national title with Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah.
On the video game.
Today,
Still run the
look,
triple option over with Bethune or no?
shout out to the world. Shout out to the world for somehow making a 10-year wait feel extra long as we approach the finish line here. Because today is the day for a lot of young men and women of a certain age. They're going to find out that they have a hell of a lot less time to play this game than they used to. And I am ready for that culture shock. But Stugotz, I have braced Cynthia for this moment for 10 years. You saw me out in Tahoe.
Yes.
We weren't working Tahoe. Tahoe was an anniversary trip.
Yep.
My anniversary isn't for another 2 weeks. But I strategized.
You did.
And I came up with a pathway. I was getting no more trips. I'm not going anywhere. My next trip is Gainesville for week 1 against Florida.
Big.
My summer is clear. And it's clear for college football 25. You're not a part of this sensation.
I have
your
2
first-
more trips to the Sphere.
I mean,
What are you talking about?
what's your first season road schedule like? I mean, you do have some trips planned.
I do. Yeah. Well, we'll see
Vegas.
we'll see what kind of neutral site games I can negotiate with Georgia Tech at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Seems like a great week 0 opponent for my Nevada Wolfpack that is now going to be perennial national champions.